Welcome to the Up Podcast, raw real talk on everything young parenting.
From self-care, co-parenting, and family planning, to balancing school, work, relationships, and goals.
Together, we're challenging society's assumptions and building a safe and supportive community for young parents.
One honest conversation at a time. So join us on the journey.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Yup episode. As always, it's Divine.
And it's Brandy. And today we have a really special guest that you all have met and seen before in multiple capacities. You all have seen her on the podcast. Y'all have seen her on the website. Y'all have probably heard about her and all the amazing things that she does. But welcome back, Kiona. How are you?
Hi, it's a pleasure being here again. I'm doing wonderful, and I'm glad to be back on the podcast.
I love it. I'm so excited to have you back. You always have this really unique wealth of knowledge that you hit the parts of parenting that sometimes we don't think about, which I really appreciate about you. And so today is going to be no different. Today we're going to be talking about the ebbs and flows of parenting. We're going to be talking about the seasons of parenting and how, you can be in one season for a moment and you can be in another season for a bigger stretch of time. And what does that look like to kind of float through seasons? So I don't know, let's start because you have a lot of content on the website or some content on the website about gentle parenting and how you show up for your kids and how you communicate with your kids and communicate with your partner and all of that. And so I want to start with just kind of looking at what does it look like for you to be a present parent? What does that mean to you? How do you do that in your daily practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I know I mentioned it in my last podcast recording, but I am still learning. That's what I try to center on, working with myself and working with my kids. I'm learning about myself and I'm also learning about my kids, especially as they're getting older and they're in school. But when I try to be a present parent, I always try to center back on what I wanted as a kid and my lived experiences and my background. I didn't really receive much of what I'm giving now. So I try to always transmute what I went through into something more positive so I can demonstrate that with my kids so my kids can continue to transmute it and demonstrate it in a better way that works for them and pass down a generation of wealth and knowledge, not in terms of materialistic values but in more of moral values. So I always try my best to practice what I preach, hold myself accountable, hold my kids accountable, hold my spouse accountable, come together, have those conversations in a way that is age appropriate and understanding for them and for me. So I always try my best to give myself and my family a whole due process of giving ourselves grace, talking through and learning from each other in a way that's mindful and considerate.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that you brought in the word mindfulness because it's so important and necessary, but it's so easier said than done. And within parenting, you kind of briefly mentioned it, there's so much outside noise, whether it be from responsibilities, expectations, the list goes on. So I want to know how you kind of filter that out. And like you said, you bring to your family, the things that matter. How do you filter out what matters and what doesn't?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like I mentioned earlier, I always try to make sure to describe my things that are age appropriate for my kids and kind of work from there. Since I wear a lot of different hats in advocacy and my schoolwork and being a parent and being a spouse and also being influence on my children and being their guardian and being their provider, I always try my best to engage them in their understanding of how they're feeling, why they're acting the way they're acting, and how I can support them. So for me, it's always been mentorship in a way. Even though I am their parent and guardian, I also am responsible for their well-being and their health. So, and they're also my investment since I birthed them and I'm taking care of them. I'm investing in their future. So I want to make sure I maximize that output the most by including them and just talking to them. And it's not perfect. Like you mentioned, it's been lots and lots of trial and error. There's just times where we're not able to talk, we're not able to see eye to eye, or I'm just too drained. But I always try to end the night with, I love you, and I'll talk to you in the morning, or I care about you and we can talk when you're ready. I always try to center on how they're feeling and what their best understanding of it is, because I just don't want to continue to lecture my kid. Like, I always try my best to be as present and be as understanding of them so I don't overwhelm them. But I just try to meet them where they're at.
Yeah. One thing that I love that what you say is you like to end your days with "I love yous" and things like that. I think it's really pivotal for parents to really understand that the words that you speak hold so much life and so much weight in your kids' lives. Um, like an example of, yes, no matter what. I mean, I think even a couple days ago, my daughter fell asleep. I think we both fell asleep. I fell asleep in my room. She fell asleep in her room. And I like woke up out of my sleep and it's like, I never told her good night. Like, when did I even go to sleep? You know, I just, like, TV's on, lights are on, everything's on. I just fell asleep and I go into her room and lights are off and everything. And she's knocked out. And I mean, she may have been annoyed with me, but I leaned over and I gave her a kiss and said, "I love you. Good night." And she kind of woke up. It's just like, I needed her to know that certainly that wasn't intentional, right? I didn't even know I was even asleep. And so the idea that always reminding, "Hey, beautiful." I don't even know if I call her by her name ever. It's always, "Hey, beautiful. Hey," whatever, just to kind of always reiterate that. And the same thing of, every day when she leaves the car, whether it was a tough morning or not a tough morning, we always like blow a kiss to each other. And it's just like, sometimes it's just from her. It's just like, it's like no emotion at all, but it's still that thing of, this is what we do every single day, whether we're feeling good, whether we're not feeling good, we blow a kiss to each other when she gets out of the car, no matter where she's going. And so I appreciate those reminders of just the little things that add up. It doesn't have to always be perfect. It doesn't always have to be us having a lengthy sit down for every single thing, because sometimes it's just not possible. And also sometimes we're not even regulated enough in ourselves to like have that conversation. But even the reminder of, even though it was a tough moment, even though you have big feelings, I have big feelings. And even though maybe right now we're not regulated to talk about it, I love you, I see you, I care about you. This doesn't define how I feel about you. It's super important. So I really appreciate you for highlighting that.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Like, thinking about that, I remember there's been times where I've scolded my son for like cussing at me, and he'd be like, "So I'm not your honeybee anymore?" I'm like, "No, baby boy, you'll always be my honeybee, but we need to talk to each other respectfully, okay?" And then he'd be like, "But you say cuss words." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a grown up, but you're too young to be using cuss words. And when mommy does slip up, you can hold me accountable, and make sure to be more mindful so I don't cuss around you guys." And he'll be like, "Okay, mommy, no more cussing." I'm like, "Okay."
I love it. I love it. So, okay, speaking about all that and speaking about all the hats that you wear and all the things, how do you, with a partner, 4 children, in school, advocacy, working, recording podcasts, doing all the things, how do you protect your peace? Because it's so easy to just be on the go all the time and forget about self. So how do you focus it on yourself, and how do you show up for you in all
Yeah,
that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I do have times where I set myself back a lot emotionally. There's times where I do spiral. I get too caught up in all the things that I have to do because I'm so like centered on like productivity and like positive outcomes, where I become a perfectionist and I self-sabotage myself. So like I notice like there's times where me and my fiance are bickering at each other of all the things that we have to do, but realistically what we've gotten done so far. Sometimes he recenters me and like helps me calm me down, and sometimes I help recenter him until we can be more productive. So we try our best to hear each other out, and we try to work our ways from there. Like, what really helps me, because of my ADHD too, I always try to write down all the things that I have to do. I'll run it by him and say like, "Okay, what can we get done today, and then what can we focus on getting done next week?" So it's always like trying to find a time where you can be vulnerable, having a supportive partner meet you where you're at, hear you out, hear your values, write something down, either both of you or one of you, and going over what you guys can do together. And I feel like that's been very beneficial because I know I'm not a perfect parent. There's been times where I have been depressed and I haven't gotten anything done for weeks. I've had bills piling up, falling behind in my classes. That's been really holding me back, and like I've tried to pull myself up, but I notice I'm spiraling further. So having a partner that can recognize that and recenter me has been the most crucial in my survival as a parent. And even like my kids seeing it too. My kids like, you know, coming to you like, mommy, come spend time with us. And I'm like, no, baby, like I have all this schoolwork I gotta do. And they're like, please. And I'm just like, okay. They're expressing a concern to me that they want to spend time with me. Even though I am behind in my class, like my child is directly reaching out to me, asking me to spend time with them. So I'm gonna want to engage with that first, and I can come back to class later. So coming back to like that conversation about like, you know, balancing the scales of our responsibilities in different seasons of parenting, it honestly starts with like checking in with ourselves.
I love that. Yeah, you mentioned like checking in with yourself, doubling back on that, being mindful. And I noticed you mentioned the word, what did you say? Recenter and refocus. I want to know, like, what are some of the things you do to reground yourself in times of change? We're talking about like different seasons. Let's say like an unexpected thing comes up, which inevitably always does as a young parent. But I know you mentioned like your partner and a lot of that. And I want to know, like, whenever there's a time maybe that you can't really rely on him, or like especially for the young parents who are maybe doing this alone or just don't have the village at that time, like what are some of the little things that you can kind of help yourself get to that point of just regrounding and recharging and recentering yourself on where you need to be at that exact moment?
Yeah, that's really challenging to like know that there's parents out there that like are doing it on their own. And I know where I've put myself in places where I physically isolated myself, where I didn't want any outside help. And what helped me get out of that was just writing down how I felt. Taking time to just take baths, like pamper myself, reconnect with nature, going on a walk, hugging a tree, meditating, yoga, some kind of like self-care practice that you can do, that like you can actually sit in silence and gather your thoughts and sit with yourself and try to like reason with yourself on what you want to do. Because I know I've chose to do a lot of unreasonable things when I was a teenager, because I sat with myself and I chose to act on impulse. Now that I'm getting older, I want to sit with myself and act within reasoning. So I feel like for like single parents or like parents that like are doing it on their own, actually creating the time for yourself to sit and think about what you could do reasonably instead of acting on impulse will be crucial in a lot of decisions you'll make as a parent.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a really, really mature kind of spin on it. And it just makes me think of, obviously, all as young parents, our brains are not fully developed. And that part of reasoning is the part that's still kind of developing. And so the realization that, hey, I maybe made these decisions off of impulse at this stage of my life or in this season of my life. And in this season, as I'm entering full brain development and full, the fullness of who I want to be as a person, as a parent, and all the things, now I have to shift my perspective. And I think, that's not even something that I've ever even thought about when the shift happened in my brain. I feel like I was wild and then I just wasn't, right? I had my child and I was like, well, I'm breastfeeding, so I guess I can't go out and do the things I was doing before because I'm breastfeeding, And 2.5 years later, now I'm finally done breastfeeding, but now I feel like a grandma because I'm just kind of in this hamster wheel of parenting. I don't remember that shift. And I appreciate you for bringing that to light, because I think if we sat with the seasons and the changes, it would be really, it would help us to reflect a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to talk about that. I want us to, as promised, we were going to talk about seasons of life, seasons of parenting. And I know personally I'm in a season where my child is now entered this. I feel like every year I say, like, I justify, oh, she's getting older, but she's still little, or she's still young, or she's this and she's that. And I know she still is, but she entered high school this year. And so that just makes it just such a different thing. The questions that she's asking are different. Where she is in her development is different. My mind frame around like what do these next few years look like is different. And so I have now been sitting back of like, what was the last season? What is this season? What do I know about adolescence? What do I know about my own self as an adolescent that I want to impart on her? Um, what are my wishes for her? How am I showing up for her as a parent? So let's talk about your current season of parenting, but also, did you see a shift in the last season to this current season? And what did that look like? And what are you bringing into this season of your parenting?
Yeah, so seasons they come and go, right? And some are like warm, some are more chill, some are more colder and challenging than others. I think I shifted from something that was a lot more warm and cool and stable to something that is a lot more like cold and uncertain in terms of like my employment and like consistency and like establishing like a dynamic and a recurring schedule for my family because my kids are now like in sports, they're in school, they're making friends, I'm reaching out to friends. Me and my fiance are navigating jobs and like expanding our platform, so it's a lot more uncertain, it's a lot more cold because I feel like this is how would I say, this is new to me, so it feels like a new space, it feels cold, so I'm trying to warm up in my own way by becoming familiar with the things that I can control. So listening to my kids, they want to do sports, they want to continue to go to school. Listening to what I just want to continue to make friends. I want to continue to check in on my mom's friends. I want to my mom friends, and I want to continue to create content with my fiance and being a advocate for youth and finding the things that ground me and focusing on that can be what is like my fire pit and that warms me up in these unfamiliar spaces and seasons that I'm entering. So whenever a season changes from when I'm working more and I spend less time with my family, I always try to recenter it to where I focus more on my family and then less on work since it's already consistent. So now that it's shifted from me focusing on my family more because my work is inconsistent, I have to focus on what grounds me and keeps me warm no matter what season I'm in.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. You do so much work, within your personal life, within your community, your advocacy. I love that. Do you like invite your kids in on any of that other than obviously like teaching them to advocate for themselves? But do you incorporate them at all, with all the passions that you have?
So I haven't started like recording it, but my oldest son, he loves streaming. He loves playing Minecraft with us. He loves playing like Guitar Hero and like drum games with us. Like when it comes to us expressing ourselves, he's all for it. When it comes to like the youth leadership, and I talk to him how like I speak for like kids everyone's like me that have no place to go and are in like places where they aren't familiar with. I want to make sure that they're safe in her. And he's like, oh, I want to be like that too, mommy. And I'm just like, well, let's get you started in school first. So I can see that he has an interest in it. I can see that he does want to start streaming and gaming. So as he's getting older, I'm going to want to try to incorporate his interest into the work that I'm doing. So it's like more authentic. But it's a new unfamiliar space that I'm trying to navigate. But it is something that my kids are definitely interested in. And then my youngest son, he loves gaming too. He's very outspoken, but he's a lot more like direct. Like, oh, I want to play Minecraft. Only I can play Minecraft. So you guys can go somewhere else. So it was finding the shivering, like the different dynamics, and the different leadership styles that my kids are exhibiting with themselves and amongst each other. Like, yeah, my youngest son is a lot more direct than my oldest son. My oldest son is a lot more open-minded and curious. My oldest daughter, she reminds me of Respucia. She come in like she owned the place. It's her way or the highway. She don't want to listen to me. She just wants to do what mommy does. She doesn't care to know what it is. She just wants to be like mommy. And then my youngest daughter, she just turned 1 on Saturday, and she just loves being around. She just loves to be included. So like as they get older, I'm gonna try to find a way to incorporate all that, but I just don't want it to be like a reality TV show. I'm trying to make an impact, so I gotta
Oh my,
figure.
I love that.
we want to see the raw and the real. We want to see all the crannies of the.
And then there's like me and my fiance were like sitting and like trying to talk to each other, and as our kids are just like telling us all the things they want to do, we're like, okay, like how are we gonna figure this out? And that's kind of where we're at right now. It's like there's like my kids are like this like giant tornado of like ideas, and like me and Ron are like kind of like the force field kind of containing it, and we're kind of whispering to each other like, okay, what do we do now? So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. It's important to balance our passions and desires and our children's passions and desires, because once you realize that these are little humans that we're tasked with kind of molding and growing and teaching and leading, but that they don't belong to us, essentially. Like they do, but they don't, right? Like they're not, I don't know, they're their own people. And so we have to give them the opportunity to go out into the world and be their own people and not just be who we want them to be or who we see them destined to be. I think that's a really cool realization, because I think a lot of times as parents, we just have the idea in our heads that this is what success looks like for our children and for ourselves. And anything outside of the box is murky and it's scary. And so I think that when I was growing up, I knew that, I should only be a doctor or a lawyer or a business person. And I did that for a little bit and I was like, I'm not happy with that. So now as I'm entering this season of my parenting and I'm like, what is my daughter into? I don't know. She's really into the arts and she's really into like performing and those sorts of things. And so am I going to steer her into being a doctor or or a lawyer or a business person? Or am I going to say, let's just explore what you love? And so I love that, right? If I always joke, and I feel like I joked about this on a podcast before, but if my kid wants to go play an instrument on the beach boardwalk, that's her prerogative, Let's figure out a way that we can monetize this effectively, but it's your life. And so how can I mold it and grow it and support it effectively is super important. I love that you're such a good example for your kids of what it looks like to be an upstanding member of society, what it looks like to be an advocate, what it looks like to be communicative and to say sorry and to not always get it right and for things to be messy, but to like still be present. You're such a good example to your kids, even on the days you feel like you didn't get it right.
Thank you. I think like the harshest critic I have is myself. And that's something I'm learning to heal, because like I do get a lot of positive reinforcement from like the work that I do and from my kids. Like I think it's just like my wounded inner child that like I always feel like I have the need to like be responsible. So it is really like honorable merit to have, but it comes at like a great price that affects my mental health all the time. So I truly do appreciate it. I think I just got to be less hard on myself. And I feel like a lot of mothers should do the same.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it also, allows us to be able to appreciate, the all those good commentary that we hear from our kids or, from outside people, and just be like, I did the dang thing. Like I did that, I'm still doing that. And kind of to what you guys both said about just, showing that interest for your kids' passions allows them to know that we can do whatever, with the different seasons, the different days, like the opportunity never dies. And I love that you have your feet and hands in so many different things, because it doesn't limit them, to one outcome, to one future career. It literally gives them the stage to be whoever they want and to try new things. And I think, like Brandy said, you're just such a good role model for your babies and for your community. And we're just so happy to have these conversations.
Thank you. Starting back to like being like a mindful and present parent, one point that I wanted to share that stuck with me is the voices that our children hear becomes the voices that they hear in their heads. So I always try my best to be a voice to my kids that is reasonable, logical, and is also like, present. I always try my best to, be that balance of like Bernie Mac and like Miss Rachel, like, oh, when you got me messed up, I'm gonna hold you accountable. But also, we're also a safe space and we can talk to each other about our big feelings, because I want my kids to think when they have tough thoughts, like, oh, I could talk to my mom about this, or oh, like this is just a feeling, it'll come and go. I don't want to hurt myself, I don't want to harm others. I know that I can be a safe person and have a safe state of mind because my mom is there and supports me, and my dad is there to direct me, and I have heard them say good things about me and encourage me and describe things to me in ways that I understand, that I can learn from. Because I know from my experiences, like, yeah, like I still am in good standing with my mom, but like even when I am hard on myself. I still ask myself, like, what is wrong with me? Why am I this way? Maybe I shouldn't be doing this right. This isn't the right way. Or maybe I need a second opinion, or maybe I'm being emotional. So, like, the self-doubt I'm trying to push out and the mindfulness I'm trying to bring in, because that's what I'd want my kids to think when they don't have me here anymore.
Yeah. Um, you know, I think a lot of things are resonating. I think the overall theme that I feel like we came in today just kind of looking at the ebbs and flows of parenting, but I really feel like an emerging theme is that it perfection in parenting is not the goal. The goal is not to always get it right. The goal is not to never be burnt out. The goal is not to, I don't know, be perfect. But the goal is to always like implement these little things. I know before we hit record, I was sharing a situation with you all. Just, the idea that my child can come to me about anything. It doesn't matter if it's good, bad, or indifferent. And it doesn't matter if we've been having conflict. It doesn't matter if we had a tough day. It doesn't matter if I don't know, we were both dysregulated. At the end of the day, if you need me, you know that I'm always here. And in the same case goes with my mom, right? She was 16 when she had, or actually 15 when she had me. And she didn't always get it right. And that doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter, because when something happens, she's the first person that I call, right? And when if I call her in an off time, the first thing that she says is everything okay? Right? Because automatically it's like, it's the middle of the night. Are you calling me? Or it's it's nothing. It doesn't matter. She answers her phone groggy and asleep. She answers her phone anytime. And I always know my mom's got me. And so I appreciate you for shedding light on it. I think also as young parents, there's always, and we talk about this so much, there's always this thing that you have to be better than a typical parent, because you have to prove that you're worthy of being a parent. You have to prove that even though you had this this thing happen, it doesn't mean that you have to be set back or you have to be any less of a parent. And so I think we put inherently even more pressure on ourselves at that point to perform, and it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy because I think the pressure becomes too heavy, and then we're being counterproductive in our parenting.
Mm-hmm. And
You're trying to achieve perfection so much that you're doing the opposite.
yeah, and I always try to tell my kids, like, let me know when I'm doing too much. Because, like, sometimes my oldest will come to me, like, Mom, you're doing too much. And I'll be like, what do you mean? He'd be like, Mom, we just finished dinner. How do you expect us to clean our room and wash dishes at the same time? Can we take a break, please? I'm like, okay. We'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back to it, see if y'all want to wash dishes or if y'all want to clean your room instead. And he'd be like, but I'm tired. I'm like, okay, well, let's see if I could take half of it and you could take the other half, or we could try to negotiate. But I always try to, I don't want my kids to see us speaking out against me as disrespectful, because I know I used to speak out a lot to my parents and I was seen as disrespectful. And I'm trying to reframe it in a way for my kids to have a conversation with me. Don't be afraid to come talk to me when I'm upset. I want you to know that I'm a safe space no matter how I'm feeling, but I just want to understand you too. So I feel like that takes a little bit off of that perfectionism that I try to uphold as a parent, because I already know my kids gonna hold me accountable.
Yeah. It also just really models amazing, healthy communication and boundary skills. And something that me and Brandy talk about all the time is just like you said, holding ourselves accountable, talking to our kids, which is sometimes scary. I don't know if I want to tell my daughter yet. Let me know when I'm tripping out, because she'll tell me that every second. Okay. But it's so good to check in, like, where can I get better? And I think just detaching from the being perfect or whatever, but how can I just show up my best self, how I can, and knowing that it looks different on different days, but letting your kids be that main source of feedback is the key, because we're showing them how to interact with the people in the world. It got to start at home. So I really appreciate you highlighting that.
Thank you.
Yeah, too many kids. I will say, having a kid and an older child than any of us here, there are so many kids, teenagers, preteens who do not know how to speak to adults or are afraid to speak to adults. And it makes me so sad and it makes me cringe when I see kids feeling like they can't. I mean, my child knows that she can always speak to adults, but even when I have to remind her, no, you advocate for yourself. Like they marked you as absent instead of tardy. No, you need to go back to your teacher and tell them I was tardy, not absent, or whatever it is. Or can you explain to me why I got this grade? Can you explain to me why, there's a way to respectfully talk to adults or to any person. But I think we were grown up that it's like you're better seen and not heard or something, whatever the saying was.
Well,
And
children
so
are meant to be seen and not heard. Yep. Or stay in
yes,
a place. Yep. I was told all that.
stay in a children's place. Yes. And so
Yeah.
what is a child's place? Please define to me what that means. A child's place is meek and quiet and in a corner? Because no, we need sometimes. I mean, my child calls me out regularly, right? And so what does that look like to be in what is it how are we translating? Like, yes, everyone needs a place. An adult needs a place, a child needs a place, but how are we sharing what that means to kids? Because to them, they just think it means you
Any
never
adult.
try to do anything, you never advocate for yourself, you never do anything, you just be.
So that's a really great question because I've had to talk to my kids about that a couple times. Like when me and my fiance are talking about bills and how we're in debt, and then my son comes in like, "Oh, you ain't got no money. How you gonna pay rent?" I'm like, "Stay at a child's place. You don't got to worry about that." Like there's certain topics that children that do want to discuss because they are curious about understanding, but like I said, it's not age appropriate. They don't understand it yet, so that's where I've noticed too, or like when it comes to like mental health and I'm like having a mental breakdown because I miss my dad, and then when my kids come in it's like, oh, she's sad because her daddy's dead, and they'd be like, why are you sad, mommy? And I'd be like, oh, I'm just feeling really big emotions right now, but I'm not in a space where I could talk about it, so I would like to be left alone, please. And they'll be like, okay, thank you. So there's certain topics that children should stay out of, like whether it becomes like seeing like traumatic things happen on TV, and my kids are like, oh, mommy, what is that? And I was like, oh, that's just something that's going on that we'll talk about when you're older, because it's a very scary topic. So there are certain topics that a lot of parents do say to stay in a child's place because it is grown folk business. Because I was told a lot about that too when it comes to like parents talk about like income, finances, mental health, work. It's not something that a kid can understand. And then like how kids are when they go to school, they talk about like, oh, my mommy and dad, she didn't pay my daddy's phone bill, so they fought this morning. And they'd be like, huh? Like, so that's what it means to me, and that's what I've kind of taught my kids on what that means too.
Yeah, I can understand that. And yes, I think that there are absolutely some topics that are off limits to children, but you're absolutely right. Their curiosity if a child asks a question, it is because they're genuinely curious about it. And so if a child is genuinely curious about something, they're going to find the information somewhere. They're going to go ask a friend. They're going to go look it up on the internet. And so we want them to ask us, right? Is there a way that we can frame it? Because I think we were shut down as kids of just because I said so, right? That's that whole thing versus, hey, like what you're saying, that's actually a little bit too mature for you where you are right now. So we'll talk about it in some years or whatever, but just know that mommy and daddy are doing okay. Mommy's doing okay. Or, my child loves to tell me that I'm broke and all the things. I'm like, girl, you don't even know the half of it. And if I was broke, you wouldn't be this and this and this and this. But whatever. And so we can have healthy communication about finances or about, disclosure in some ways. Like, yes, I could totally understand what you're feeling about that stress about school because I had that same feeling when I was your age or whatever it is. But I think you're absolutely right. There's a way to curb their curiosity without just shutting it down.
I really appreciate you mentioning that, Brandy, which honestly, it really just makes things harder for ourselves. I know for me, I have fell victim into like parenting from that transitional, traditional parenting, old school, how our parents have raised us, and it's harder to get out of that. But it just shows like how strong we are as a person to unlearn unhealthy things once we've come to that realization, and that is hard in its own. So I just feel like that's something that we don't give ourselves enough appreciation and grace for, having to unlearn, not just learning new things, but unlearning, a place that feels comfortable, that like that's all and I think that is where like a lot of that mom guilt comes from, or like wanting to be perfect, like you said, Kiona. So I just, yeah, that's such a big thing, and I think we should talk about that some more. Just how and when do you realize that you're not parenting in a way that feels right for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I often find myself falling back in to like either repeating the voice that like in the way that my parents used to talk to me, like when my kids are getting in trouble, like, oh, why are you doing that? Like, no, stop doing that. Like, okay, I can see that like I do want to redirect them, like stopping in the middle of the moment and like identifying, okay, why am I upset? Why did I say what I say? Okay, well, I don't want them playing with the TV cords because they could get electrocuted. Okay, maybe I should explain that to them instead of just directly giving them a command and not specifying. Um, and that's what I try my best to do in the moments. Like, yeah, I'll be upset, like, hey, no, stop that. And I'll be like, okay, can we talk about that really quick? Come here, come here. And then, I'll sit down with them and talk to them a little bit more. And then I'll ask them to like, in like, what is your understanding of why I'm talking to you right now? They'll be like, because cords are dangerous and can shock us and we can get hurt. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's exactly what I was explaining. Thank you for understanding. Fist bump. All right, go about your way. Just be safe. So I always try to like, when I find myself saying what like my parents used to say to me, I like try to stop myself and try to gather my reasoning of why I'm saying what I'm saying, and then try to explain it to them, and then have them repeat back to me their understanding of it, and then positively reinforce and encourage their ability to listen to me and repeat things back to me, because it's showing that like I'm actually working with them. Going back to what I was saying earlier about like taking the bad things and the good things from our childhood and transmuting it into a way that is more healthier and age appropriate and understandable for our kids to learn from has been my guiding light in all the parenting that I'm doing, because I often find myself wanting to like get upset or wanting to ask my kids like, what's wrong with you? Like, I don't want to say that though, because that's going to make them start to question and doubt themselves. So instead of asking what's wrong with them, I want to actually try to understand them, because there's a lot of kids out there that do feel like there's something wrong with them, and that suppresses them from fully expressing themselves. And that's what I struggle with too. So I always try to have humility in everything that I'm doing. And I try my best to explain it in a way that my kids can understand it too. Like, oh, I'm not perfect, or I'm sorry for getting upset and yelling. And I try my best to just be mindful of that. Like, there's times, like, I know in the last podcast, I talked about like how kids do need to be disciplined or the world's going to hit them much harder. Or sometimes if you just try to stop in that moment and have a conversation. I think it's just hard as like a parent, like with our generational traumas, to really identify that moment when to really stop. But it's something that we're all learning and working through. It's just taking that generational trauma and transmuting it into generational wealth through understanding.
Mhm. I'm just gonna, yes, nuggets on nuggets on nuggets. Because one thing I was gonna say, Divine, to answer your question too, it is that reflecting. Why am why am I making this decision? Why is this a rule in my house? Why is this something that makes me dysregulated or upset? Why? And I think when you get down to the why, and I know we talked about this in like our milestones in discipline maybe a long time ago, but when you get down to the why, sometimes us as parents, we're even going to figure out like, oh, there's actually no justifiable reason. That's just something that I inherited from my parents or my grandparents or my great grandparents, that was just a thing. But if I actually start to sit and be like, I need to justify my parenting strategies in order for them to actually be helpful and to like change the trajectory of my legacy and what the future generations see, then I think that's super helpful. And I think also going back to, I mean, just being accountable to yourself too. It's okay to say, hey, I didn't get that right. I mean, I try not to yell so much. And so when I do yell, and that's clearly upsetting, then I say, hey, I shouldn't have let myself get that dysregulated. I should have taken a breather and whatever. Here's what I was trying to convey, and here's what frustrated me and got me to that point. But I apologize for getting to that point. Like, I, as the adult, needed to do some self-searching before I got there. Or here's a decision. Here's why I feel like this is something that you should consider, right? Whatever it is. I think another really good key thing, and I think you touched on this earlier, Divine, of just checking in with your kids, like, how can I be better for you today? How can I be a better mom? Also, a question I asked a group of like girls a couple months ago was, if there's one thing that you wish adults knew about you, what would that be? And this is a question, obviously, as they get older, so they can actually, do. And the things that they came up with was great. Like, when I get in the car after school, I don't want to talk immediately, right? Check in with me and see it. It could have been a long day. It could have been a hard day. And the last thing I want is, how was your day? And hounding me with questions. I would have never known that, because I thought that was me showing you that I care about your day, right? And so just checking in with them on how can I show up better for you? And I'll say one last thing, and then I'm gonna get off the soapbox, because a couple months ago I was out of town and my daughter was really sad about it, and I was like, hey, I am doing some things to be a better mom, right? I was away and I needed to like do some healing. I was at a conference. I needed to do some soul searching. I needed to just like take a breather for a second. And so now she uses it a lot. Like, oh, I thought you were away to be a better mom, but you told me to wash the dishes. And I'm like, I didn't go away. Not even go away, right? I didn't go away. I went to a conference, but in that conference, I knew that I wanted to get some healing. I knew I wanted to do some soul searching in that time. And so, ma'am, it was not about you not having chores. It was not about any of that. It was just about mentally, I wanted to come back refreshed, right? And just whatever it is. So they get it. They see it.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to be that, human in front of your kids, so they're knowing that they don't have to put on that performance of perfectionism. But another reason why like it's so important to have them conversations is because not only are like seasons constantly changing for them, seasons and stages are constantly continuously going with them without their even knowledge. So, what may have worked before, asking them about their day after school, they might not be at that stage. They might be too cool for that. So you have to find another way to show up for them in that, age appropriate way that seems to work for them within that stage that they're in now, which may change.
You don't know when it changes though. Like,
and that's the problem.
When did it change? When did it shift? Yeah.
So I need to ask you every day. We just need to have like a survey, like 1 through 5, like what phase are we on? Like, check the temperature. Have we hit that yet?
Yep. So true. Oh, well, this has been a really good, fruitful, like really, I don't know, enlightening, but also like healing that inner child just a little bit. Everything you do, right? Just even if it's just a little thing to heal that inner child to be better for the next generation, I think has been really a really sweet space today. I would love to end us on just asking, what does a path forward look like for you, Kiona? What does legacy mean to you? How are you prioritizing self in this season of parenting, in the season of transition, and what does it look like? That was a loaded question.
Yeah, that was very loaded.
That was a loaded question, but I feel like you got it.
Yeah, thank you. So what the path forward looks like for me is just trying my best to do everything with intention. If I'm sleeping in bed for the entire day, what is my intention for that? To rest. Okay, cool. I'm not going to argue that with myself. If I want to go back to the gym today, why am I doing that? Because I want to improve my health. Okay, that's actually positive. I want to center on that. So the path forward for me looks like centering on things that can benefit me spiritually and for my mental health. Those are the things that I'm focusing on moving forward. All the monetary, materialistic things are not my priority. What I'm trying to prioritize is my sense of self and the stability of my families. And I want to encourage all parents that are watching this to not lose sight of who you are, who your spirituality lies, and like what your values are, and the legacy you're leaving behind for your children. Because all too often we get too caught up behind these screens and the things that we chose to focus our energy on that's not positive, and it drains us. So just taking the moment to recharge, reevaluate your values, what you want to do, what your goals are, is what I'm going to be doing moving forward. And I encourage more parents to do the same, because with that consistent discipline, you're leaving behind a legacy that your children can learn from, that is safe and something that they can understand. Because kids learning basic boundaries and communication can take them anywhere in life, and they should learn it from us first.
Wow, that was so amazing. I love that. Reevaluating goals, reevaluating yourself. That is definitely on my to-do list for moving forward. But I think it also, like, speaking of just, different seasons and changing, reevaluating constantly with yourselves gives you opportunity and space to like mentally prepare for change, because your goals are, you're going to have to change in whatever season that you're in, and but also knowing that like that season may not be forever. So whatever season that you're in, a high or a low season, reevaluate your goals and keep doing them. And it's okay for your goals to change, and yeah, new responsibilities, new schedules, whatever it is, with the tools you have at hand and the community that you have, there's always a way.
Yes, and I want to conclude on the point that it doesn't always have to be internal and limited to family. Going out in your community and finding spaces where you could just share those values and like bring more awareness to what parents go through and what they can do. Just volunteering, or like, sharing space, sitting down with a friend that you haven't talked to in a while, grabbing coffee, checking on them, what their goals are, and like maybe probably starting like some kind of peer-to-peer support movement in your community can go a long way, because it truly does take a village, and I feel like we can all build that village together.
Yes, thank you for your nuggets. Thank you for your vulnerability as always, Kiona. We're gonna have you on again. We'd love to have you and Ron on. That would be super fun. So we're in talks for that. But thank you again. And as always, y'all,
Next
check
time.
in. Yeah, until next time, check in, check Kiona's content on the website, ask any questions. We have a close relationship with her, so we can always get your questions to her. So yeah, till next time, y'all.
If you enjoyed the Up podcast, please subscribe, share, and leave a comment.
And visit youngunitedparents.org for the information, community, and resources young moms and dads need to thrive.